The Story of Civilization, Part 2, The Life of Greece, being a history of Greek civilization from the beginnings and of civilization in the Near East, from the death of Alexander to the Roman conquest, with an introduction on the prehistoric culture of Crete. Chapter 3, The Heroic Age, Part 4, The Siege of Troy. Was there such a siege? We only know that every Greek historian and every Greek poet and almost every temple record or legend in Greece took it for granted that archaeology has placed the ruined city generously multiplied before our eyes, and that today, as until the last century, the story and its heroes are accepted as in essence real. An Egyptian inscription of Ramses III, is it Ra-Masu? Is that how you say it? Oh, I don't remember the word for three. Reports that the Isles were restless towards 1196 BCE, and Pliny alludes to a Ramses in whose time Troy fell, a great Alexandrian scholar. Eratosthenes. On the basis of traditional genealogies, collated late in the 6th century before Christ by the geographer historian Hecataeus, calculated the date of the siege to 1194 BCE. Now, I personally believe that the Christ part of the whole Jesus Christ thing was about a century earlier than the Christians put him. But the ancient Persians and Phoenicians agreed with the Greeks in tracing the Great War to about 4 abductions of beautiful women. The Egyptians, they said, stole Io from Argos. The Greeks stole Europa from Phoenicia, and Media from Chalkis did not. A just balancing of the scales required that Paris should abduct Helen. Helen, it need hardly be said, was the daughter of Zeus, who in the form of a swan seduced Leda, wife of Sparta's king, Tyndareus. Well, a lot of people might not know what's being talked about just hearing this program by itself. Stesichorus in his penitent years, and after him Herodotus and Euripides refused to admit that Helen had gone to Troy. She had only gone to Egypt under constraint and had merely waited there a dozen years for Menelaus to come and find her. Besides, asked Herodotus, who could believe that the Trojans would fight 10 years for one woman? Well, whoever's in charge, right? Euripides attributed the expedition to excess population in Greece, which is still one of those pieces of propaganda they put on us, right? And the consequent urge to expansion. So old are the youngest excuses of the will to power. Nevertheless, it is possible that some such story was used to make the adventure digestible for the common Greek. Men must have phrases if they are to give their lives. Whatever may have been the face and shibboleth of the war, its cause and essence lay, almost beyond doubt, in the struggle of 2 groups of powers for possession of the Hellespont and the rich lands lying about the Black Sea. All Greece and all Western Asia saw it as a decisive conflict. The little nations of Greece came to the aid of Agamemnon, and the peoples of Asia Minor sent repeated reinforcements to Troy. It was the beginning of a struggle that would be renewed at Marathon and Salamis, at Issus and Arbela, at Tours and Granada, at Lepanto and Vienna. All the events and aftermath of the war, we can relate only what the poets and dramaticists of Greece have told us. We accept this as rather literature than history, but all the more that reason a part of the story of civilization. We know that war is ugly and that the Iliad is beautiful. Art, the very Aristotle, may make even terror beautiful, and so purify it by giving it significance and form. Not that the form of the Iliad is perfect, the structure is loose, the narrative is sometimes contradictory or obscure, the conclusion does not conclude. Nevertheless, the perfection of the parts atones for the disorder of the whole, and with all its minor faults, the story becomes one of the great dramas of literature, perhaps of history. Parenthetical numbers indicate books of the Iliad. In regards to Book 1, at the opening of the poem, the Greeks have already besieged Troy for 9 years in vain. They are despondent, homesick, and decimated with disease. They had been delayed at Aulis by sickness and a windless sea, and Agamemnon had embittered Clytemnestra and prepared his own fate by sacrificing their daughter Iphigenia for a breeze. Zephyr, right? On the way up the coast, the Greeks had stopped here and there to replenish their supplies of food and concubines. Agamemnon had taken the fair Chrysis, Achilles, with their precise, a soothsayer, now declares that Apollo is withholding success from the Greeks because Agamemnon has violated the daughter of Apollo's priest, Chrysis. The king restores Chrysis to her father, but to console himself and point the tale, he compels Chrysis to leave Achilles and take Chrysis's place in the royal tent. Achilles convokes a general assembly and announces Agamemnon with the wrath that provides the first word and the recurring theme of the Iliad. He vows that neither he nor his soldiers will any longer stir a hand to help the Greeks. Regarding Book 2, we pass in review the ships and tribes of the assembled force, and in regard to Book 3, we see bluff Menelaus engaging Paris in single combat to decide the war. The two armies sit down in civilized truce. Priam joins Agamemnon in solemn sacrifice to the gods. Menelaus overcomes Paris, but Aphrodite snatches the lad safely away in a cloud and posits him, miraculously powdered and perfumed, upon his marriage bed. Helen bids him return to the fight, but he counterposes that they give the hour to dalliance. The lady, flattered by desire, yields. Regarding Book 4, Agamemnon declares Menelaus victor, and the war apparently ended, but the gods, in imitative council on Olympus, demand more blood. Zeus votes for peace, but withdraws his vote in terrified retreat when Hera, his spouse, directs her speech upon him. She suggests that if Zeus will agree to the destruction of Troy, she will allow him to raise Mycenae, Argos, and Sparta to the ground. The war is renewed. Many men falls, pierced by arrow, lance, or sword, and darkness enfolds his eye. Remember that people generally thought that if something happened, that, God or the gods or whatever allowed it. Regarding Book 5, The gods join in the merry slicing game. Ares, the awful god of war, is hurt by Diomed's spear, utters a cry as of 9,000 men, and runs off to complain to Zeus. Regarding Book 6, in a pretty interlude, the Trojan leader Hector, before rejoining the battle, bids goodbye to his wife, Andromache. Love, she whispers to him, thy stout heart will be thy death, nor hast thou pity of thy child, or me, who shall soon be a widow. My father and my mother and my brothers are all slain. But Hector, thou art father to me and mother, thou art the husband of my youth, have pity then, and stay here in the tower. Full well I know, he answers, that Troy will fall, and I foresee the sorrow of my brethren, and the king. For them I grieve not, but to think of thee a slave in Argos unmans me most. Yet even so, I will not shirk the fight. His infant son, Astyanax, destined shortly to be flung over the walls to death, but the victorious Greeks screams in fright at Hector's waving plumes, and the hero removes his helmet that he may laugh, weep, and pray over the wondering child. And he strides down the causeway to the battle, and, regarding Book 7, engages Ajax, king of Salamis, in single combat. They fight bravely and separate at nightfall, with exchange of praise and gifts, a flower of courtesy flowing on a sea of blood. Now, is there a J sound in any of those languages? There's not in Greek. So, not even the Old Greek where they had the Q. What other letter? The Q with the figama. Regarding Book 8, after a day of Trojan victories, Hector bids his warriors rest. Thus made harangue to them Hector, and roaring the Trojans applauded. Then from the yoke loosed their war steeds, sweating, and each by his chariot, tethered his horses with thongs, and then they brought from the city hastily oxen and goodly sheep, and wine, honey-hearted, gave them, and corn from the house. Firewood they gathered with all, and then from the plain to the heavens rose on the winds the sweet savor, and these by the highways of battle, hopeful, set through the night, and many their watchfires burning, even as when in the sky the stars shine out round the night orb, wondrous to see, and the winds are laid, and the peaks and the headlands tower to the view, and the glades come out, and the glorious heaven stretches itself to its widest, and sparkle the stars multitudinous, gladdening the heart of the toil-wearied shepherd, even as countless. Twixt the black ships and the river of Xanthus glittered the watchfires, built by the horse-taming Trojans, by Ilium. Meanwhile, the war-wearied horses, champing spelt the white barley, close by their chariots, waited the coming of fair-throned dawn. Regarding Book 9, Nestor, king of Elean, Pallas, advises Agamemnon to restore Briseis to Achilles. He agrees and promises Achilles half of Greece if he will rejoin the siege, but Achilles continues to pout. Regarding Book 10, Odysseus and Diomed make a two-man sally upon the Trojan camp at night, and slay a dozen chieftains. Regarding Book 11, Agamemnon leads his army valiantly, is wounded and retires. Odysseus, surrounded, fights like a lion. Ajax and Menelaus cleave a path to him, and save him for a bitter life. Regarding Book 12 and 13, when the Trojans advance to the walls that the Greeks had built about their camp. Regarding Book 14. Hera is so disturbed that she resolves to rescue the Greeks. Oiled, perfumed, ravishingly gowned, and bound with Aphrodite's aphrodisiac girdle, she seduces Zeus to a divine slumber while Poseidon helps the Greeks to drive the Trojans back, regarding Book 15. Advantage fluctuates. The Trojans reach the Greek ships, and the poet rises to a height of fervid narrative as the Greeks fight desperately in a retreat that must mean death. Regarding Book 16, Patroclus, beloved of Achilles, wins his permission to lead Achilles' troops against Troy. Hector slays him and, regarding 17, fights Ajax fiercely over the body of his youth. Regarding Book 18, hearing of Patroclus' death, Achilles, at last, resolves to fight. His goddess mother, Thetis, persuades the divine smithy, Hephaestus, to forge for him new arms and a mighty shield. 18 fights Ajax. 17. 19, regarding Book 19, Achilles is reconciled with Agamemnon. Regarding Book 20, engages Aeneas and is about to kill him when Poseidon rescues him for Virgil's purposes. Regarding Book 21, Achilles slaughters a host of Trojans and sends them to Hades with long genealogical speeches. The gods take up the fight. Athena lays Ares low with a stone, and when Aphrodite, going for a soldier, tries to save him, Athena knocks her down with a blow upon her fair breast. Hera cuts the ears of Artemis. Poseidon and Apollo content themselves with words. 22. Regarding Book 22. All Trojans but Hector fly from Achilles. Priam and Hecuba counsel Hector to stay behind the walls, but he refuses. Then, suddenly, as Achilles advances upon him, Hector takes to his heels. Achilles pursues him 3 times around the walls of Troy. Hector makes a stand and is killed. Regarding Book 23, in the subsiding finale of the drama, Patroclus is cremated with ornate ritual. Achilles sacrifices to him many cattle, 12 captured Trojans, and his own long hair. Well, can't you just sacrifice on people's behalf rather than to them? The Greeks honor Patroclus with the games, and regarding Book 24, Achilles drags the corpse of Hector behind his chariot 3 times around the pyre. Priam comes in state and sorrow to beg for the remains of his son. Achilles relents, grants a truce of 12 days, and allows the aged king to take the cleansed and anointed body back to Troy. And thus we see an example of if there were multiple gods and they fight with each other, then what other ethics or morals or consciousness one would have. There may be a general counsel and how things would generally go, but sometimes that would be wrong, or sometimes it wouldn't matter. It would create a lot of issues, even just in terms of human response.